Launch your medical career with zero to little debt with the Army's Health Professions Scholarship Program. HPSP is one of the most comprehensive scholarships available in the healthcare field. The Health Professions Scholarship could be great for those pursuing a career in one of these fields: medical, including osteopathy, dental, veterinary, nursing, counseling and clinical psychology, and optometry. For more information, visit goarmy.com/HPSP.
Good morning and welcome back to the AMEDD Effect Podcast, where we discuss the causes and effects of Army medicine opportunities. Always, before we jump into episode 8, I need for everyone to do me a favor. Like the podcast so you can stay up to date on the next release dates. Rate the show and leave us a comment. Let us know how we have been doing. And last but not least, share the show with someone who you know that may find the information that is being provided useful for them in their future endeavors. Today on the AMEDD Effect, I'd like to welcome Major Katie Neumayer to the show. Major Neumayer currently works at the Medical and Chaplain Recruiting Brigade and is currently the Medical Corps Recruiting Integration Officer. Good morning, Major Neumayer. How are you doing today on this Friday morning?
Good morning, Will. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great. I'm ready for the weekend.
Man, me too. I am ready for the weekend as well. We have recorded, I think will be podcast number 3 this week. So we've been hammering away at trying to get this information out there. So thank you for taking the time out of your day for coming on to the AMEDD Effect to talk to us about the causes and effects of Army medicine.
Of course.
You are originally from Centennial, Colorado, which is outside of Denver, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What is you all consider that the Mountain West region of the United States? Talk about growing up in Colorado and the things you found interesting doing when you were younger.
Yeah, well, hopefully you have a lot of time because I could talk about Colorado all day. Being here in the Midwest right now, I miss the mountains every day. But growing up there, if you're from there, you know it, but being outdoors and hiking and skiing and just experiencing the mountains and them immediately available at your disposal, it's just a part of your everyday. So that's what I knew.
Okay.
And it's really shaped a lot of who I am.
Okay, so I was going to ask you too. I thought about that when I was looking over some information about you. Are there any particular mountains or any type of things that you have done that you would like to mention? Mountains that you have hiked that you would like to mention and tell us about?
So my favorite place to hike is in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Okay.
If you've never been to Colorado, it's pretty easy to get to from Denver, and there's a wide variety of hikes for people that are not very experienced or not acclimated to the altitude, to those that are expert hikers and are ready for a full day reaching a 14er.
Okay.
So that's a good place to start, and definitely really beautiful.
Now, being here in Kentucky, have you had the opportunity to hike any of the trails here?
Yes, so I'm glad you called them trails instead of mountains. I'm biased to that title, but there's actually been more opportunities to do outdoor stuff here than I realized. So I have 2 little kids. We go up to Bernheim to hike. They love seeing the giants. It keeps them entertained while I coach them to get their miles in.
That's nice, yeah. Probably an unknown fact that people don't know about me, but I worked in television production, so I actually worked on the show Lost Ollie, and they filmed it at Bernheim Forest. So it was a real big thing. We came out there. We worked on that film out there for about a week. So it was real cool. But
I know that.
Yeah, Bernheim Forest. But now, for somebody like myself who has never been to Colorado, if I were to go out there, what would you suggest that I go do or see?
So if you like music, I would definitely recommend seeing a concert at Red Rocks.
Okay.
There's a lot of hype about it, but the hype is worth it. It's a very unique experience in the summer, just being outdoors, and the acoustics are beautiful.
Okay.
So that's definitely high on the list. We already talked a lot about hiking, but even in downtown Denver, I am not a huge baseball fan, but Coors Field is really cool just to be outside and great views of the mountains while you enjoy getting to see the sunset.
I have to make it out that way. I have to try to make it out that way and go see Colorado. I have a buddy who's his wife is stationed out there, so they're out there in that area as well. Now, you are a pediatric intensivist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, make sure I get that word right. And you are also currently the Medical Corps Recruiting Integration Officer. Could you give us a brief overview of what those two positions entail?
Yeah, so by my medical training, I'm a pediatric intensivist or critical care pediatrician. So though that means I did a pediatric residency, so that was 3 years learning how to take care of kids in all realms. But during that time, I realized I really enjoyed being inpatient and taking care of sicker kids and getting to do some hands-on procedures. So then I did an additional 3 years of subspecialization and a fellowship for pediatric critical care. So I take care of kids when they're their sickest and in their greatest moment of need. I love it. And then in my unique Army role right now, the recruiting integration officer, I serve mostly as a resource to our over 500 medical recruiters.
Okay.
Because they know a lot about the paperwork to join the Army, but they don't necessarily know what it means to go through the Army residency match or even necessarily what a fellowship is. And so I help bridge that gap as an embedded subject matter expert for them.
Okay.
And then also from a more strategic standpoint, liaise between recruiting and medical corps leadership on issues that we're both facing.
Now, I spoke with Major Jones, and he said they're pretty much kind of like the face of the dental program. So would you say you will be the face of the medical portion of it?
Yes, that's how he phrases it. It feels like a big responsibility, but yes, he carries it well.
Now, during early years in school, for when we grew up, when our kids are growing up now, it's common for the school administration to host a career day. They allow the kids to dress up as what they would like to be later on in life. Do you remember what age you were when you became interested in working in the medical field? Was it at that early age or was it later on in life?
It was really early for me. Something about being able to do science, but the humanism part of medicine is kind of combine those things for me. And so I knew really early. I feel like even in elementary school, I told people I wanted to be a doctor. And luckily that stuck with me through each level of my education and just became more solidified.
Now, after you graduated from high school, you decided you wanted to further your education and continue to push forward towards the medical field. So you attended college. Where did you attend undergrad, and what did you end up getting your degree in?
So I went to a really small liberal arts college in the north side of Chicago, Lake Forrest College, and I got my degree in chemistry.
Okay. Now, being from Colorado and then moving to a smaller college, well, it's right outside of Chicago, so I'm pretty sure it's easy to go into the city. But being in a smaller town in Illinois, how did you adapt to that new town? And did you ever become homesick and wanted to be back home in Colorado while there?
Yeah, so I had never been in the Midwest before going for college, and so Midwest winters are a whole different thing right off the lake compared to Colorado. Even though I'm used to snow, the cold was just different.
Yes.
But when I first got there, so I was a college athlete. I played soccer, and soccer season is in the fall, and so that really kicked things off right away. I was really busy between that and school. And the benefit of being an athlete is I had a team. So I had an immediate group of peers, and most of them were also from out of state. So it was a good group of friends to help us all adapt together. So that first semester, I feel like I was fine because I had a lot going on. But then in the spring semester, when soccer had ended and the winter cold hits you, it was kind of like, I miss home. So that's when it hit. But luckily by then I had a good group that we got through it all together.
Right. Well, that's cool because I was going to say my next question was going to be like having a strong support system is definitely important, but having a strong support system at home is important, but also coming there and being with a group of individuals who can also be an extended part of that support group is also important. How would you rate having those individuals support you when taking on these new life endeavors?
I would, like, on a scale of 10, I would say it's like an 8, 9, or 10. It's very important, and that feels even more relevant further into my military career. Okay. So I'm married, and I have 2 kids, and we're not near our extended family. And when you have little kids, often you want their help. But now that we're in the military, we have such a great community of friends in each of the locations we've lived that they've kind of become our family. And so that's what gets you through.
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time I grew up a military brat, so there were times when we went to Germany and it's like we're away from family, but just we're originally from Alabama, but there are no stations where we're from, no close locations. So my dad, he was all over the place. So it's like we were far away, so we had to latch on to those friends and those military families to, become those support systems as well. Now, I looked at a video and you talked about being one of the first people in your family to seek higher education. And you went to Lake Forest and you earned your undergraduate degree. But then you began to push forward towards medical school. Did you have any idea during that time how you would pay for medical school?
No. You're so focused as a pre-med student on just getting into medical school and application process, doing well on the MCAT, making sure you meet all the check boxes for the requirements you need, that you're focused on acceptance, that the financing part of it didn't come till later. And I was really, really fortunate in graduating my undergrad. I had pretty minimal to no debt because I had scholarships. And what wasn't covered, I did a lot of work study and babysitting or nannying to make up that difference. So then when I had my letter of acceptance to med school and I started to really consider how I was going to fund it, I started to panic a little, especially because I graduated my undergrad in 2009, which was just immediately after the 2008, 2009 recession. The economy was not in a great place, and the idea of taking out potentially $500,000 in educational debt just felt daunting to me.
I know, that's right. Whew. I can understand how you felt about that. Now, when you well, before I get that, let me say this real quick. Now, I have a daughter. My daughter, she's currently in high school, and her career path is in the medical field. So she's currently looking at becoming a pediatric surgeon. As you were going through medical school, how did you gain interest in becoming a pediatric? Gain interest in pediatrics?
So first off, I should definitely talk with your daughter since she has interest in pediatrics. Happy to help connect her with anyone. But I knew pretty early that I liked taking care of kids. They're just a naive, vulnerable population. They're funny. And a lot of the time, they are a victim of their health circumstance. They didn't contribute to it. And so I loved being able to help that population.
Okay. Now, we were just speaking about HPSP before I asked you this question. Now, let's talk about the scholarship opportunities that the Army offers to students looking to navigate unique, challenging opportunities of medical school. What exactly does the HPSP acronym stand for, and were you afforded the opportunity to take advantage of the program?
Yes. So that is how I funded my medical school. I participated in the 4-year HPSP program, or the Health Professions Scholarship. And what that entails as a student, for a medical student, is it covers the full tuition wherever you attend medical school within the United States or Puerto Rico. You also get a $20,000 signing bonus, which is a nice influx of cash at the beginning of school. For me, I used it to buy a car because I didn't have a car before starting med school. And they also cover any mandatory books and supplies. And then the last part is you also get a monthly living stipend. It's currently about $2,700. It adjusts every year with some inflation, which is a great influx of cash while you're in med school. It's definitely better than paying your bills with loan money.
Yeah, I know that's right. Now, you're currently working for recruiting, or you work in recruiting. And throughout the years, recruiters they go out to different colleges, different universities, and they, hold suture clinics, talk to students about the different programs so they can know about, hey, the Army offers all of these different things. How did you first learn about the HPSP program? Was there a recruiter who came out to talk to you all, or was it a little bit different?
It was very similar. So even though my school was small, there were still Army medical recruiters visiting. And they really just had a booth set up outside of our cafeteria. And I did not know at the time the Army had anything related to health professions, let alone becoming a physician. But they had some brochures out that referenced that. And I was like, that's an option. I had never considered military service before. I found it very intimidating. So I took a brochure, did a little research on my own, and that gave me the confidence to then interact with a recruiter directly to get more information.
Now, when it comes to college, a new job, or even financial aid, we're required to fill out an application. And the scholarship opportunities always come with criteria for those who want to apply. Can you tell us what the criteria is for those who would like to apply for the scholarship, HPSP scholarship?
Yeah, so the best way to start the application process is to meet with an AMEDD or Army medical recruiter. They're different than a typical Army recruiter because they have greater knowledge of our medical programs. But the baseline requirements are that you are applying to medical school. You usually do the application for the scholarship in parallel timeline to applying to school. And then, so you have to have taken the MCAT. We have a minimum MCAT score of 500 with 124 in each line score.
Okay.
To get into medical school, that may need to be a little higher than that, but that's at least where the Army is their initial consideration. And a minimum GPA of 3.2.
Okay.
We consider students that don't meet those benchmarks with a waiver process, so that shouldn't deter anyone from applying. Those are just kind of the initial criterion to accept.
Now, would you say there's a particular time when a student should start looking into applying for these scholarships?
Yeah, I usually say the earlier the better, just so you can gain as much information as possible and make the most informed decision of if the Army and joining Army medicine is right for you. But traditionally, it's a parallel timeline to applying to med school, so starting in the summer before your senior year of college, or if you're in a gap year in that summer time frame, May, June, July.
Okay.
The earlier the better.
Now, I've had the opportunity to speak with other medical professionals, and one of the main things that they have say are Army medical professionals, and one of the main things that they have always everybody has been in common that everybody has said is how tough it is for medical students to pay for school. In what ways do you believe that the HPSP scholarship alleviated some common pressures or worries for you while you were in school?
I think the biggest thing is, besides not incurring a large debt because they were paying my tuition, is that monthly stipend. Like, I was able to maintain a pretty decent quality of life since I had some positive cash flow. So really the financial stressors were relieved. But there was really nothing else during med school that I was required to do for the Army. They wanted me to go to school and get good grades.
Go to school and get
that,
those grades.
That was the emphasis.
Okay. That's good right there. Go to school, get those grades, and then come out and let's get to work. Now, HPSP, or the Health Profession Scholarship, is one of the, would you say it's one of the better scholarship opportunities that the Army offers?
Yes.
Now,
definitely the most value.
The most value of that one. But there are other student loan repayment opportunities. You don't have to go into too much detail about the other ones, but could you briefly describe what other loan repayment opportunities are out there for medical students?
That's a great question, because even being an Army physician, I didn't know a lot of those programs existed till I joined recruiting and I learned all about them. And that we have options both on the active duty side and the reserve side, so full-time Army and part-time Army at every level of medical training. So as a student, as a resident, potentially as a fellow as well, and then even as a fully qualified attending physician that maybe didn't get to take advantage of the scholarship opportunities but has always been motivated to serve in some way. We offer accession bonuses for a variety of medical specialties.
That's good. So you guys hear that. If you are interested, make sure that you go on to the AMEDD website and look at all those different opportunities that are out there for you all. Other than receiving the scholarship to help you pay for medical school, were there any other pivotal moments or events that led you to want to do your job in the Army?
Good question. I think the biggest thing when I joined HPSP that I didn't know about was the benefit of the Army match or our graduate medical education programs, and I didn't understand that till I was living it. A lot of people think, oh, if I join the Army through the scholarship program, that I will be forced to do an emergency medicine or trauma surgical residency, because that's what they envision the Army needing. But the full array of medical specialties for residency is available to you, hence here I am as a pediatric subspecialist. And the process of matching into residency is a lot easier to navigate because it's smaller scale. So I think it makes it more beneficial for the student because the programs get to know them as an individual and they're vested in their success as opposed to just a number who's coming to their programs. I think that's the biggest thing that is hard to articulate in a website or to teach to the recruiters since they've never been through that process, so they don't know it. So now that I'm on the other side of it, I was like, that is the biggest advantage I've experienced.
Okay. Now, one last question about the Health Profession Scholarship Program before we move on. A person who is a recipient of the HPSP scholarship, what do they owe in return for having their school debt paid from the Army?
Yeah, so if they did our most common or traditional scholarship, which is the full 4-year scholarship for medical school, they would owe the Army 4 years of service as a physician of whatever type they trained once residency is complete. If they do a residency that is longer than 4 years, they may owe the duration of their residency, just since they also were receiving extensive training. So the simple answer is 4 years or the length of your residency if longer.
Okay. Now, I think I lied. I do have one more question about HPSP. But so you had somebody come out to speak to you and teach you about the HPSP program. Why do you feel today is important for you to go back out and reach out to those students to spread the word and the knowledge about HPSP?
I think half our battle within Army recruiting is just increasing awareness. People think of the Army as deployments and infantry and armament, but there's physicians in the Army as well. And so we just have to spread the word that we have a lot of opportunities for you to get amazing medical training. And so I'm passionate about sharing that because I didn't know about it till I found it myself.
Right.
And I think there's still a lot of unknowns. So I want to give others the opportunity that don't have a way to pay for medical school, similar to myself, that there is a really good opportunity out there that they can take advantage of.
Yeah, I tell my daughter all the time, hey, you need to look into this because
I told
school,
you, I got to talk with her.
Medical school is going to be expensive. You're already in my pockets now. So now, after you completed your undergrad, you went back home towards Colorado and you attended Rocky Vista University School of Osteopathic Medicine. Now, Rocky Vista has 3 different campus locations. Which one did you attend, and was that decision based on being closer to your hometown?
Yeah, so at the time, they only had one campus, and it was the Colorado campus. I was the second graduating class, so it was newer then, and I missed the mountains after being away in the Midwest. So that was a part of it. But for me, I also only applied to osteopathic medical schools. That's different than a traditional med school applicant. But my family doc, my whole life had been a DO, so I was familiar with it and the principles, and that's what I wanted to pursue. So it worked out that there was a school in Colorado, and I could get the training that I wanted.
Now, let's give a round of applause to MAJ Neumayer for being a part of the second graduating class from Rocky Vista. Tell us about your experience taking classes, working towards the profession that you will work in.
Yeah, so I think everybody knows that medical school is relentless. You get there and you just it feels like you're sometimes surviving test to test. And the first 6 months is the hardest until you get your battle rhythm, get used to the amount of time you spend studying, get used to the volume that you're studying because it's just different than undergrad. But it's fun because it's what you've wanted to be doing. That's what you've been working towards. And so finally learning relevant information that you're going to apply to the next step in your career, it's enjoyable. It's hard, but it's enjoyable.
What are some of the key responsibilities for someone in osteopathic medicine, and what are some of the pros and cons about that field?
Yeah, so not everybody knows about osteopathic medicine. So what that is I graduated with a DO medical degree instead of an MD. We are still able to apply all of the same medical treatments, go to the same types of residency as an MD graduate. We just get additional training in the musculoskeletal system and some hands-on treatments to help with musculoskeletal injuries. Those are mostly relevant in a primary care practice, but can really be applied in any instance. Otherwise, the training is very similar.
Okay. Now, after you completed your medical school, it was time to go off to residency training. The Army, they offer 78 different residencies and 43 fellowships. For residency training, you attended Madigan Army Medical Center. Talk about why you wanted to attend Madigan for residency training, and was Madigan the top location of your choice?
Yeah, great question. So the Army has 4 pediatric residency programs, so I researched all of them. Madigan was my top choice, and not just because it was in the Pacific Northwest so I could keep up my hiking and skiing habits, but they had a great board pass rate, so it was a really high-quality program. And when I got the opportunity to go do a clinical rotation during medical school there, I felt like I fit the culture of the program. I just felt like I fit in. It was going to be a stressful 3 years of my life, and the faculty and the staff there were similar to me, and it felt like they were going to be good mentors and coaches on my path to becoming a pediatrician.
Okay. Now, you guys, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Here is a message from Chaplain Schultz about Army chaplaincy.
Since 1775, Army chaplains have acted as spiritual counselors who support, motivate, and provide emotional guidance to soldiers and their families. We are looking for chaplains to care for spiritual, moral, and emotional well-being of the Army. Follow your calling as an Army chaplain. Visit goarmy.com/chaplain for more information or to speak with one of our virtual recruiters today.
You guys, welcome back to the AMEDD Effect. More with Major MAJ Neumayer. Madigan Army Medical Center is one of only 21 surgical simulation centers in the U.S. And they were able to achieve level 1 status, which is the highest for surgical education excellence. Did you know about this prior to making that selection?
I did not know those specifics, but I did know they were very focused on medical simulation as part of medical education, which is important to me because it really is a huge part of residency learning because you can't do every single procedure on a human patient before you try it on a mannequin if you don't have the hand-eye coordination or the motor skills to do it. So it's a great way as an intern or even junior resident to get that hands-on experience before you have to apply it to a real-life situation.
And those SINMENs, they are way advanced. I mean, they can move, they can release blood, they can do all different types of things. So I'm pretty sure that those SINMENs, they come in handy for those training opportunities.
Yes, definitely.
Now, while halfway through your residency training, you had an epiphany. You realized that you were interested in intensive care. Give us some insight on why you wanted to get back to working in a hospital team environment.
Yeah, so I went into residency thinking I was going to be a general pediatrician and just take care of cute little well babies, follow them every few months. And while that is really enjoyable and I still love that, I loved being inpatient. They were a captive audience. I can see if my treatment interventions were making a difference or not. And the ICU had the added benefit of making that even more instant feedback. What can I change to help this situation? And I got to do hands-on procedures, which I really loved, like intubating and putting in chest tubes. There's nothing more gratifying. So that was it. And then also the inpatient side of it is the team aspect, and you mentioned that. So we work with really skilled nurses, really skilled respiratory therapists. We have social workers that help navigate the dynamics that is the complexities of having a really ill child. And I liked being a part of that team. I think some of that goes back to my athletic nature and always being on a team throughout my life, and that felt more prominent in the inpatient setting than outpatient.
Okay. Now, while we're on the topic of training, what other training opportunities for career advancement are available within the Army healthcare system, and how can Army medical professionals take advantage of those opportunities?
Oh, they are endless. When it comes to both medical education and further training, but also more of an Army aspect in leadership. So that's one of the reasons I've chosen to stay in Army medicine is so much of the leadership training is embedded on your journey, and it teaches me a lot about being a better leader, which isn't always necessarily embedded in a civilian, traditional civilian pathway. But also for the medical opportunities, the Army will often refund you to attend conferences to get your CMEs. They want you to be the best physician you can be, so they will find a way for you to attend those things.
On an annual basis, the brigade or the battalion will host an educational tour at one of our medical facilities throughout the United States. Normally, we have community partners, professors, and others. They come out, and we are able to give them insight on the inner workings of Army medicine. With this knowledge, these individuals are able to go back and tell students at their colleges and universities about the wonderful opportunities that the Army has to offer. Last year, the medical experience was held at Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas. Now, this is a place that you are familiar with.
Yes.
From your perspective, why is it important for us to host educational tours? And what type of feedback have you received from some of those individuals who have participated in the tours?
Great question. I think they're important to address a lot of the misconceptions that we face daily as medical recruiters, and that somehow Army medicine is different.
Right.
But really, stateside, in our large academic hospitals, it's just like in a civilian hospital. There's medical students from all kinds of schools. There's residents from different programs. and faculty that are very vested in teaching and research. And so all those same things are happening. And every time I've participated in Ed Tour, the people that have joined are like, wow, this is just like our hospital, or even better with the opportunities. And so just to show them or normalize Army medicine, that it isn't necessarily as different as they perceive it.
Yeah, and I agree with that, because I spoke with Colonel Walker, and she talked about how someone had came down and they had, once they went through the tour and they learned about Army medicine, they had a entirely different perspective on how everything went. They were thinking that the students wouldn't have the opportunities to have a word to say anything, and it was just going to be totally different. So I think that that is very important for individuals to come out to, and you know, just lay their eyes on to be able to tour those different facilities to see what the Army has to offer.
And I think even to showcase what our combat medics do. So we did one, I think, 2 years ago at Fort Cavazos, and it was part of their joint simulation exercise, and it was out in the field. And we got to actually see what the combat medics do. And everyone was just mind blown by their skill set and how smart they were. And so that was a fun thing to showcase as well.
Yeah, it is. I had the opportunity to go out to Fort Hunter Liggett and be a part of one of their field exercises as well, and it was definitely amazing to see, you know, the tents coming up, everybody out there working. And I mean, although it was just a training, they really treated it like, hey, this is going on right now. So you were able to see everything hands on. So even us coming down there, we had to turn our cell phones in.
Yep.
We had to make sure that we had the correct attire on to represent that, hey, these are who these individuals are. So definitely a great time. Now, at one point of time in your career, you worked at Brooke Army Medical Center. What was your position while you were there, and how long were you assigned to that location?
I worked at Brooke for almost 3 years.
Okay.
Right when I got there, I worked in the PICU, and I also took over as chief of the Pediatric Sedation Unit. And then shortly into my time there, I also took over chief of the PICU.
Okay. Now, the Army has large medical facilities like BAMC, along with community hospitals as well. Have you had the opportunity to work in both settings? And if so, which one did you enjoy the most?
Great question. So as a subspecialist, I have mostly been in the larger medical centers because my patients are inpatient. I need immediate access to get imaging, anesthesia, surgical procedures. So I've been at the larger medical centers and haven't really been afforded the opportunity to work at some of those.
How would you say being a physician in the Army has helped you develop as a leader? What skills have you gained? And how do you think that they have benefited you personally throughout your medical career?
So as a leader, I mentioned this earlier, but one of my favorite things about the Army is that I got to take advantage of clinical leadership opportunities a lot earlier in my career than I would have been afforded as a civilian physician, like getting to be the chief of the sedation unit and the chief of the PICU so early. While initially intimidating, it taught me a lot of leadership skills and just managing people, understanding their needs, understanding how they want a quality work environment, and getting to be there to support them really as a servant leader. How can I make this better for you? And I think a huge part of being a leader in the Army is being adaptable. So being able to flex if something changes, because change is constant. That's the only thing we know. And so how do you adapt to that situation to continue providing the highest quality and safest patient care while maintaining a good working environment for your employees?
How would you say that working in medicine, Army medicine, sets you apart from the civilians working in medicine?
Yeah, so whenever I get asked that question of, hey, if I do this scholarship, will it be hard for me to transition to the civilian world after? And my answer is no, because often being a veteran, being an Army physician, people look at that very highly. You have great leadership experience because you were taught along the way. You have practiced potentially in an austere, resource-limited setting, so you know how to adapt, you know how to overcome, and you have great experience that's highly valued.
In your opinion, how does Army medicine set itself apart from other healthcare systems?
That's a big question. I think the biggest thing is Army medicine. It's a small world, so everyone is wanting to help each other, whether that's with a research project, with a QI project, with advancing to your next step in leadership, or mentoring you when you're preparing to take a command position, or mentoring you in your next role as a teacher, because we have career paths of all kinds, whether it's research, medical education, clinical leadership, or operational leadership. There's so many different options. You can dabble in all of them, and there's always people willing to help coach you along the way.
And I'm glad you brought that up because my next question was going to be I wanted to talk about people who may not know about the Army or the Army Medical Department. The Army Medical Command is composed of 6 corps. What are some other medical professions that someone interested in medicine can do in the U.S. Army?
So I would be a terrible intensive care physician if I didn't say nurses. That's the first thing. It's the most important thing to any sort of patient care is high-quality nurses. So there are a lot of opportunities for nurses in the Army. And I think you've talked to Colonel Walker already about that.
Yes.
So she can share more.
She's a super nurse. I think it's super nurse. Was it super nurse number 4 or number 2? The one of them.
We have lots of super nurses, so hopefully you get to talk with them because that's definitely important. And then I know you've also talked with my good friend, Battle Buddy Major Jones.
Yes.
We have a lot of need for Army dentists.
Okay.
Our Medical Service Corps, that encompasses a lot of different things, but it's all the planners and logisticians that help us do our jobs by making sure we have the supplies and the people in the right place to do it. And then the Medical Specialty Corps, so physical therapists, occupational therapists, dietitians, endless opportunities, and with Army training programs to get to that pathway. And what am I forgetting? Oh, I can't forget our vets. It's very popular to be a vet in the Army. That HPSP program, they have great interest. So
okay.
Hopefully you get the opportunity to talk to an Army vet one of these days, too.
So I have. We actually went down to another field exercise down in Fort Campbell.
You've been busy.
Yeah, been busy. So we went down to Fort Campbell and we spoke with some Army vets, some individuals who worked with military working dogs. Very interesting to hear about what they do. And that's one of the things that they said as well is a lot of people don't know that the Army also has vets.
Yeah. I didn't know it until I joined. And the working dog stuff, some of the things they do are very interesting.
Yes.
And they even teach us as physicians, like, if we had to respond, what to do. And I don't know if you got to see the simulation or the mannequin, the dog mannequins.
Yep, we did.
First time I saw one of those, it was so interesting. I could have stayed there and learned for hours.
Yeah, they they didn't fly it in, but they were supposed to fly a real one in, but they brought the sim dog in and they did a whole exercise training. Just working with the dog and everything like that. So it was definitely interesting. One of the things that I found interesting about it as well is that they check all of the food. They inspect all of the food. So the food that come onto the post, the MREs, all of those things are all inspected by our veterinarians as well. So that was real. That was interesting. I wouldn't even thought that. I thought that would be somebody else's job. Now we have civilians who work on posts. We have former individuals who are in the Army are what we would consider retirees. In what ways does Army healthcare collaborate with civilian institutions to provide high-quality care for soldiers and their families?
Yeah, so everywhere I've worked, so as a resident at Madigan, and even during fellowship, my fellowship was very military-friendly, so we had a lot of military trainees. And then at BAMC, there are so many partnerships within the community at the local hospitals that civilian medical students can come experience Army medicine, and our medical students can go experience their facility. And same thing with our residencies. So where I did residency, at the time we didn't have a pediatric nephrologist, which learning about the kidneys is a critical part of understanding how to be a good pediatrician.
Right.
So we got to go up to Seattle Children's and spend time in a world-renowned children's hospital and get that experience as well. So the Army has partnerships at all their facilities just for you to get ongoing experience.
Okay. Now, a few more questions before I get you out of here today. One question that we always like to ask is the Army the Army has a lot of different Army bases where you could be stationed at. Is there a particular place that you have been assigned that you have liked the most and why?
That's a tricky one. The biggest hurdle for me joining the Army was control of my location, because you've already heard that I'm a Mountain West girl.
Right.
That's where I want to be. And so if I couldn't get to stay there, that was overwhelming initially to get over. But now that I'm 11 years in, that's almost been my favorite part of the Army, is everywhere I've lived, I've picked up something different about the culture there that has just given us resilience and some humility as a family. So I really loved Washington.
Okay.
So it had the mountains, but it also had the aspect of the water. that I really enjoyed. So I'm hoping to go back there one day. But this upcoming summer, I'm actually moving to Hawaii to go work at Tripler Army Medical Center. So we'll see what that has in store.
Okay, that sounds good right there. Have ever been to Hawaii before? This would be your first time?
Just once. The Army gave me an all-expenses trip paid to go for a clinical rotation in med school. And I loved the program, but I just loved Washington more. So ended up there after those auditions.
Now, in May here in Kentucky is the Derby. During the Derby every year we have a white coat commissioning ceremony. Have you ever attended the Derby white coat commissioning ceremony before, and what was that experience like for you?
I have never attended it, but I was actually at the Derby last year when they did it, and I was part of medical recruiting, so it was fun to watch, see it showcased on such a large scale. Like, this is what people are doing. There are doctors in the Army, there are medical students in the Army, and this is the opportunity we can afford them.
Do you remember when you did your ceremony and how that was for you?
Yes, I do. So we did it shortly after orientation at med school, and it feels like a big responsibility. Like, this is a journey of how to take care of others, and you don't take that lightly, and so that's where it really becomes serious, but rewarding. Of this is what I'm about to do, and my family was there with me and got to celebrate. So
right.
Could support me through the next 4 years.
So they did the swear-in and everything there as well, right? Good opportunity right there. Now, at the end of the day, when the uniform comes off, you're at home with your husband, your children. What are some hobbies or some things other than hiking? Because I know we talked about hiking. What are some other hobbies or interests that you are interested in doing with your family?
So I love all things fitness. So running is my release. So I always get my time in on for that.
Right.
That's how I could take my break. But my kids are little. So my daughter, she's almost 4.
Okay.
And my little guy, he's 18 months. So that kind of dictates everything right now. But trying to teach them a love of outdoors. And so you'll see us frequenting the playgrounds on the weekends. But then we also really love to travel.
Okay.
So I take advantage of my vacation days and showcase them.
Right.
Everything we can.
Definitely good. Now, upon retiring, when you decide, hey, it's time for me to get out the Army, go do my own thing outside of uniform, do you think that you will continue to work in the medical field, go and work at a hospital, in the private sector?
Yeah. It's such a huge part of who I am.
Right.
And I just love taking care of others, especially kids that are critically ill, helping their family get through their greatest moment of need. So we'll transition that to a civilian skill set. But that's a ways down the road for me.
Now, last question here. If you could give advice to any medical student who would be interested in going to medical school or maybe looking at the Army to help pay for medical school, what type of advice would you give them?
It sounds corny, and I've said this to a lot of students, but I think my biggest piece of advice is to enjoy the ride. Most people, not we're all, I can't speak for everyone, but most people that pursue medicine are very type A. They want a straight line pathway to something, and once we achieve one thing, we're focused on the next. Like, you get your medical school acceptance, then you're already focused on what residency you're going to, and it doesn't get easier at each step. So yes, it's hard living test to test or rotation to rotation where you're working 80 hours a week. But it doesn't get easier as a junior attending or even more senior attending. So try to find ways to have fun and get that release, whether the Army is involved or not. Okay. When it comes to the Army, my biggest piece of advice is get as much information as possible. Talk to people with experiences that went through the program, have lived at different Army bases, and get the knowledge to make the most informed decision.
Okay, then that sounds like a plan. Well, MAJ Neumayer, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come sit down and be a part of the AMEDD Effect. If there's anything that we left out or anything else that you would like to mention, you can go ahead and do so now. If not, that will be a wrap for us.
Thanks for having me. You hit it all, so I have nothing else to add.
Are you looking to pursue a successful healthcare career at one of the largest and most advanced medical facilities in the country? If so, look no further. The U.S. Army is here. Visit goarmy.com/AMEDD to learn how you can serve soldiers, their families, military retirees, and at times the general public while providing meaningful service.
Again, if you guys are interested in learning more about Army medicine and the opportunities that the Army has to provide, visit goarmy.com/AMEDD. The causes and effects of Army medical opportunities are endless. When you join the U.S. Army Medical Department, not only will you get more out of your medical career, but you will also provide meaningful service to soldiers, their families, military retirees, and last but not least, your country. To learn more about AMEDD, visit goarmy.com/AMEDD. That's goarmy.com/AMEDD. And if you're looking for information on tuition assistance, visit goarmy.com/HPSP. That's goarmy.com/HPSP.